shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224. Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today. Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting teamsters1932.org/organize to start today. And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to. Lots to talk about. Bidenomics. Bidenomics working. The numbers have come out for the June job numbers. Wow. Yeah, I know that my Republican friends hoping, wishing, working for recession, want to see some bad news. Because I was told these job numbers, well, you think they're going to be good. They're not. They're going to flatten out, I was told. I was told to expect somewhere around 200,000. Dow was expecting 220. They had revised some things down in May. 497,000 jobs for the month. That is the biggest monthly increase since July of 2022. And this is one of those things where you go, I know what the economic talking heads, I know what the right-wing politicos are wishing and hoping for, but the economy seems to be rolling right along, even as the Fed is trying to slam on the brakes. From a sectoral standpoint, they're saying that the hospitality and leisure sector added 232,000 new jobs in the month, 97,000 construction jobs, and 90,000 in transportation and utilities. Now, this is one of those things where you go, wow, things are going good. Wages increased by 6.4%. That means, well, things are getting better for working people. Now, of course, it's inflationary. These increased wages, it's going to mean, it's going to be inflation. And look, I had one of those conversations today. Had one of those conversations with a friend today. Good friend. Telling me, I'm so concerned. All I hear about is, they keep saying we're spending this money and it's causing all this inflation. And I'm concerned it's going to erode, my pension. It's going to erode all this other stuff. And my mind is like, if we had stronger unions, if we had better bargaining power, because corporate America is wildly profitable, doing wildly well. I argue that the inflation that we're suffering under is by choice. Corporate America is sticking it to us at every opportunity. And the fact that wages are starting to creep up a little bit, I think that's a good thing. That could be very helpful. Now, the 97,000 construction jobs, that to me, very, very important. Means we're rebuilding stuff, means we're doing something, means we're bringing some manufacturing back. The reason I bring this up, Wall Street Journal today had a really telling article. Something you may have heard here on the program for the last 18 years, but it's good to know that the Wall Street Journal, the newspaper of the investor class, it's nice to know that they're finally coming around. Maybe someone was tuning into the program, heard something, they go, oh, this is important, because it is. The headline, the West again learns that war needs industry. And they point out that behind the lines in Ukraine and, with Russia is stuff. You need to have supply lines. You need to have guns. You need to have ammunition. You need to have stuff. Tires. Tires a big thing. And good ones, not those cheap, crappy Chinese ones, but actually good tires so that you can get out of the mud. Learn that right from the beginning. And I like how in the article they said, Russia and Ukraine, they're battling this out. And, it's a lesson. This is what they wrote. It's a lesson Washington is relearning. And I'll point out that our friends over at the Alliance for American Manufacturing did a pretty substantial report a decade ago laying out all the deficiencies in our supply chain for our military. And it's only gotten worse over the last decade. And so if it's one of these things where we go, well, Washington's relearning it, I don't know. I think Joe Biden is moving us in the right direction. Again, ending the neoliberal nonsense of outsourcing jobs and corporatizing profits and socializing losses and harming working people by gutting their wages and their benefits. I'm thrilled about the way Biden's taking us. But it's interesting to see the Wall Street Journal, the newspaper of the investor class, saying, you should probably think of this. And they're right. We should. And that's why Biden is out doing his cross-country tour, getting out the message about rebuilding our economy, rebuilding our country, the Investing in America tour. South Carolina today, talking about the jobs that are going to be created, and one in particular, this end phase is in South Carolina. It's going to create nationwide about 1,800 jobs, 600 in North Carolina. Its manufacturing partner Flex going to create some of these jobs. Now, me personally, I get why Biden's in South Carolina. James Claiborne, we want to try and compete there. I'd still love to see these jobs in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Illinois or any of the states that have been decimated by Reaganomics and deindustrialization. But bringing these jobs back is a good thing. New creations of jobs, a good thing here. And back to the Wall Street Journal piece, the newspaper of the investor class. They seem in favor of now reshoring manufacturing, because I think rich people going, hey, well, we can make some more money now, because they were afraid they were going to get gutted over in China, because they were. But the president was in South Carolina touting his plans, which is billions of dollars going, for roads and bridges, broadband access, and of course, tunnels. There's a giant tunnel project in New York. Anybody who's ever ridden public transit into New York knows needs help. Anyone who's ever driven into New York City knows needs help. Need to get people off the road and into public transit. Need to make it easier to get in and out of the city. There is a $6.88 billion tunnel program. It is the most ever awarded to a mass transit project in this country. And what I want to see is, I want to see a giant statue. I want to see a giant Joe Biden going, I did that. I want to see a massive Joe Biden going, I did that. The job numbers. He should be coming out going, yeah, me, this guy right here. the B-man. Jelly Bucket Joe, here I am, Builder Biden. Because Democrats don't do this well. If Trump had just a smidgen of the success that Biden's had, you would have never heard the end of it. It would be nonstop. And this is where Democrats got to pull your heads out of the sand and say, look, I know Joe Biden can't get a sentence out, so let's get it out for him. Biden did this stuff. It's Biden's plans. It's Biden's policies. It's what they pushed through. And we need it. This is the thing. And, I had someone email me and say, hey, you need to talk to this guy in Minnesota because of the Minnesota miracle, because they're taking some of this money and they are rebuilding their state and the jobs that are being created. Again, this isn't rocket science. This is pretty simple, basic, just common sense economics. If you bring money in to build something, you're going to create good union construction jobs. Those jobs are going to have a reverberation effect across the entire local economy. Because those construction workers they're going to need clothes, they're going to need meals, they're going to need housing, they're going to down the list. That means other jobs. That means hospitality jobs. The fact that how many hospitality jobs? 232,000 across the country. Those are people going back to working in bars and restaurants and serving people who have what? You can say it, disposable income. I know it's something that we've kind of forgotten, but it's something we got to fight for. So as I'm looking at this moment, this is good stuff. And the fact that Biden's approval ratings are so down in the dumps is incredible to me. And it speaks volumes to the power of right-wing messaging. Speaks volumes to the power of the F channel and their copycats. Speaks volumes to negativity. All I've heard about the last couple of days, everyone's emailing me, it's cocaine gate. There's cocaine all over the place. Biden's doing coke on the Resolute desk. I go, no, he's not. If he were, he would be much more energetic. And look, I love Joe Biden, and I think the guy is doing the right stuff. But you got to realize, he's getting up there. And as someone asked me, do you want him as president? Yeah, I want his policies, man. I want what he's brought. I want the vision of where he wants us to go. I want to reshore our manufacturing. I want to be the world's manufacturer again. I want to be what we were 30, 40 years ago. I want to be that bridge in Trenton, New Jersey that says Trenton makes, the world takes. I want that to be a reality. I want those jobs to be here. I want those products to be here. I want the innovation, the entrepreneurial spirit. I want all that stuff here. Because we let policymakers, we let politicians funded by greedy CEOs undo the most powerful economy that this planet has ever seen. And why? So that they could make more and you could make less. So they could crush those unions. They could crush those workers who, 40 years ago were making $20, $25 an hour with the best health care you could possibly get and a defined benefit pension. They ruined all of that. They ruined the American dream. They ruined the middle class. They ruined what my grandparents fought for. And it's our job to claw that back. And we've finally got a guy in the White House who gets it. Finally, a guy in the White House is saying, policy-wise, we need to undo the horrible of the past. So I give Joe Biden credit. I give him credit for head on, taking the right-wing nonsense. And this is the greatest part. You don't see him engaging any of that. He's just showing up, doing his job. Jelly Bucket Joe on the job, man. So I want him to get 4 more years. I want to see what we can do in the next 4 years to reshore our manufacturing and create the jobs of the future. I do. Want to hear your thoughts, though? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you will find ours. Quick break. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, let the fun begin. You knew the Republican-led House was going to be entertaining. You know it. You knew from the beginning that they couldn't help themselves. They were going to end up eating their own. And today they did. The Freedom Caucus, the Tea Party folks, the ones out on the fringe, the Scott Perrys. Scott, pardon me, Perry, my congressman. Evidently, they ate one of their own today, claiming that Marjorie Trainwreck Green is not conservative enough. She's not enough of a lunatic. So she's out, and I'm like, wow, that is impressive, and I love the fact that they gave her the ouster. So that is good. Now, here's another one of my favorite things. I had to sign up for Threads today, and I'm not a Facebook person. Not a big Facebook person. We post stuff occasionally just about the show. I don't engage in a lot, but I had to sign up for Threads today, if for no other reason than to thumb my nose at Elon Musk over Twitter, because evidently they're not pleased with the competition. Now, remember, it was all about free speech. I feel sorry for the woman who became the CEO that Elon brought in to eat that giant you-know-what sandwich. I liken her to the Devin Nunes. So she's going to be the new Devin Nunes. She tweeted out that, Twitter's the place for free speech. And, I don't even think she believes this. But I had to sign up for the Threads as for no other reason than to make a bigger number for Elon to get angry about. And now, evidently, they've threatened to sue. Threatening to sue. And I'm waiting to see how that plays out. Should be entertaining. Now, on social media, what's going on? You got Donald Trump doing what he does, and it is all about being as reckless as ever. Evidently, he re-truthed or sub-truthed or whatever that is over there, what was Obama's home address. He had crazy guy out front with some guns, and Chris Christie, and look, I'm not a Chris Christie fan, but good on him for slamming Trump for sharing Obama's address. But understand what Trump wants. Trump wants somebody taken out. He wants the poorly educated, the dim, to go after these people. And, violence and intimidation works. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Kurt from Akron on line 1. Kurt, how are you?
Hey, good evening, Rick, and thank you for taking my call.
What's on your mind, brother?
Well, you know what disgusted me more today about that speech down in South Carolina that President Biden gave today?
Do tell.
Not one major media outlet covered it.
Yeah.
That disgusts me in the sense that, you got a twice impeached, twice indicted former president who gets all this billion-dollar free advertising whenever he even makes a fart. And Joe Biden has a great policy speech. And I will say he's not the greatest speaker in the world, but he gets the job done. And yet the media won't cover it because he's not entertaining enough. for the people.
Yeah.
It goes back to your poorly educated thing you just said too. But another thing that I wonder the media will I even heard it today on Tom Hartman that there was supposed to be like a little under 300,000 jobs created for the month of June.
Yep.
And apparently we have just a little under 500,000 jobs that were created.
497,000. Yep. If any of that would have happened during the Trump years, you would have never heard the end of it.
Exactly. And then if you heard it during the Obama years, Trump would have said, "Oh, those are fake numbers."
Yeah, heads I win, tails you lose.
Exactly. And as far as this whole Obama address thing, I just don't get it with Donald Trump and his troth central or whatever.
Oh, I do. I
that.
completely get it, Kurt. It's all about intimidating people. It's all about threatening and harassing. It's all about engaging the dim among us to go do violent things to make prosecutors are being threatened. I mean, he wants people showing up at people's homes and intimidating them.
Cokehead? Did he say that Jack Smith was a cokehead on there too?
Yeah. Look,
and then get this. He retrost or whatever you want to call it, some meme that someone put on his platform about 81 million votes, and I've never seen in my life a pro-Biden hat, flag, or shirt, or something of that nature. And I'm going to clean this up where it said, "Let's go, Brandon," and you know what I mean by that. And then it said, "Let's go, Brandon," to anyone who voted for Biden. That's a real classy former president, wouldn't you say?
As I put on social media, this is presidential now, I guess. And is this the kind of guy you want in the White House? Someone who's going to repost the F Biden flag? And no, I would hope. I would hope people would be angry enough to say no. We're going to throw this clown to the curb. But the cult, Kurt.
It is, and it's like I had a problem with a guy today on social media where I tweeted that speech from the White House YouTube channel today. And he said right away, "Well, everything he says is just a lie." And it's getting to the point where, are these people lied to so much that they don't even know what the truth is when it's finally told to them?
Yeah.
Kind of like Harry Truman says, how many times do you have to be hit on the head before you figure out who's hitting you?
Absolute truth. Truth. Good stuff, Kurt. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and you have a good night.
You as well. Look, the reality is what it is. He wants to incite violence. They want the cult to go and do the things that they're going to do. Now, it's interesting. A while ago, you may remember this for people who've been listening for a while. I had someone tell me, Kerry Lake's going to be the vice president. It'll be Trump and Kerry Lake. And I said, it's never going to be Kerry Lake. Never, ever, ever will you see Kerry Lake as his vice president. And look, I'm going to continue with this. Evidently now some of the insiders in the Trump world are saying that, Donald's kind of cooling on her. Now, if you remember, what I said was there's no way an egomaniac like Trump can be in the same room with someone who takes away from him, who detracts from him. He's never going to put someone on the ticket who's going to be more interesting. Mike Pence was the perfect milquetoast candidate to go along with Trump. He was. Nobody noticed he was in the room. Nobody noticed and cared what he had to say. He was the bucket of warm spit. Kerry Lake actually, gets some attention. Good-looking woman, firebrand, got crazy stuff to say, could get the base all tingly in the panties. So I said, there's no way Trump takes her because she would detract from his star. She would make people turn away from Donald and to her, and you can't have that. So when I saw this story today that the Trump advisors are going, at the heart of Trump's frustration is that, she always wants attention. She's a spotlight hound. And she always wants attention. And Trump can't have that because Trump always wants attention. He is an attention hound. And I got to think it goes back to his childhood. There's a part of me that goes, it wasn't hugged, wasn't breastfed, wasn't loved. I don't know, but it just seems it is what it is. But when folks were going, no, she's never going to be the candidate. You're going to find someone who's boring to go along with him because he's got to be the center of attention. You never pick someone as your number two who should have been the number one. I think John Edwards. Kerry choosing Edwards was a not a great choice because Edwards was much more interesting than John Kerry, which is why Al Gore, who was quite boring, chose Trader Joe Lieberman. Just is what it is. Want to hear your thoughts, though? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1988. That was the day 167 oil workers were killed in the Piper Alpha oil rig explosion in the North Sea. It is considered the world's deadliest oil rig accident ever. Around 10 p.m., the platform essentially turned into a fireball so massive, rescue helicopters could not get near it. Gas lines ruptured when the night crew accidentally activated a gas pump down for repairs. Immediately, the platform was rocked with explosions, first wiping out the control room, then engulfing it in flames. The platform split into two. Its oil derrick toppled. Most were killed instantly, as the crew's quarters were directly above the gas compression module. Toxic fumes overcame others. Some jumped 100 feet into the sea. The platform was completely destroyed. It took 3 weeks to bring the fire under control. Occidental Petroleum later admitted the rig's design was fundamentally flawed, but many considered the explosion nothing short of industrial murder. The rig was notorious for fatalities and near misses. Jack Malloy, head of the offshore trade union OILC, recalled, Piper was synonymous with accidents. People would say, Piper? Oh, you don't want to go there. That place is ready to go. Conditions were so bad, the union pulled its reps off the safety committee. The next day, 115 oil workers in Humberside walked off the job, demanding better health and safety conditions. Subsequent investigations determined Occidental failed to enforce basic maintenance and safety procedures. Over 100 safety improvements were recommended. Occidental paid out $100 million to the families, but escaped prosecution. Today, there is a memorial chapel at the Kirk of St. Nicholas and a memorial sculpture in the Rose Garden of Hazelhead Park, both in Aberdeen, Scotland.
2 pieces of good advice. Never sign nothing by neon, and never negotiate with snakes. But Joe Biden violated both rules this year, getting out-negotiated by Senate Republicans and their tag-along Democrat Joe Manchin. As a result, Biden completely surrendered an urgently needed program for America, universal child care. The U.S. child care system is broken at every level. Availability is scarce, and even if parents can find an opening, the price is forbidding. Yet, care providers and teachers are grossly underpaid. So we're doomed by corporate greed and Washington's indifference, right? Wrong. Grassroots people across the country are demanding and getting real change at the state level. Last year, for example, voters in New Mexico rallied a decade-long care rebellion to put a landmark initiative on the ballot to guarantee that all children ages 0 to 5 have a constitutional right to quality early childhood education. Moreover, Amendment 1 allocates a steady stream of money from New Mexico's land-grant permanent fund to make this promise real. The vote initiative passed with 70% of the vote. Vermont, led by such persistent grassroots groups as Let's Grow Kids, is providing $130 million a year to establish a solid base for universal child care. Last month, the Republican governor vetoed the funding provision. But a bipartisan legislative majority, prodded by public demand, has now voted to override the veto. Also, the red state legislature in Tennessee is providing a new and essential child care benefit to low-income parents of infants and toddlers, diapers. And even some in the U.S. Congress are beginning to get the child care message, having formed the first ever Congressional Dads Caucus to push family-friendly policies. This is Jim Hightower saying, when leaders won't lead, the people must shove them out of the way.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday on the program, we talked about this 16-year-old it's Wisconsin now. Yesterday I thought it was Michigan, but it's on the Michigan border, but it's in Wisconsin, where this 16-year-old kid was killed in a logging accident or in a hardwood logging facility. We don't know what the details are yet, but we know a 16-year-old is somewhere in the logging industry, which is the most dangerous industry in this country. More people die, get hurt, all of that stuff in the logging industry than any other place. So what's a 16-year-old doing? And I know, teaching responsibility, getting work ethic. Yeah. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on this story and where sadly we may be going. I've asked our good friend Jordan Barab to come talk with us. Jordan was a former acting assistant secretary and deputy assistant secretary of labor for OSHA during the Obama years. He does an incredible blog, jordanbarab.com/confined spaces. You will find all of the horrible things that happen, and somebody at least is bringing this attention. Jordan, thanks for taking time for us.
Sure, glad to be here.
So I'm looking at this story of this 16-year-old kid. I have no idea why a 16-year-old kid is in an industry that is as dangerous as this one is. Any insight?
No, I mean, we have a lot of states, Wisconsin, Iowa, and many others who are lowering, standards and requirements for young workers. Is it because of the alleged labor shortage, or just because they want to pay them less? The Iowa law actually exempts them from any kind of liability as well. So basically what they're finding is, in these young people, what employers are finding is a very vulnerable workforce, workers who don't know their rights, if they have any rights, being so young. And even if they know their rights, they're afraid to assert their rights. It's their first job. What do they know? Yeah. They don't know if they're dangerous. If they're not trained, they don't know if they're dangerous. It's prime fodder, for exploitive employers. But unfortunately, these are the most vulnerable workers, and they're getting killed. I mean, you mentioned the one in the sawmill a few weeks ago. Another 16-year-old was killed in a landfill. We're not quite sure of the details there, but obviously, I used to work for ASME. We used to represent landfill workers. I mean, these are incredibly dangerous jobs, moving equipment and, dangerous machinery, toxic chemicals. I mean, you don't want to be working there as an adult, much less having your 16-year-old kid work there.
Yeah, and as I've been saying, Jordan, that, the sad reality is we're now a society where you almost have to have three incomes to get by. I mean, there was my grandparents' generation where one income could support a family. There was a period, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, where it was two incomes. Now I think we're at that three income threshold where you got to push the kids out in the workforce if you want to stay in the house and put food on the table.
Yeah, that, or if you want to go to college, and God forbid get out of college without a crippling debt, you want to make some good money, and I'm sure these jobs, that put their lives at risk, probably pay some decent money, but is it worth it at that age to risk your life, when you should be working in a supermarket or babysitting, and hopefully going to college that you can afford.
No, look, I wish that were the case, but when we talked with the one state rep in Iowa, Sammy Sheets, who was on a construction site and found 12-year-olds working in there, they weren't making big money. No. You've literally got 12-year-olds in a construction site, and this is what the Iowa law is, I guess, bringing us.
Yeah. Well, the Iowa law disguises them as apprentices or student learners. It's just a way of trying to get around federal law, and we'll see. Hopefully that won't work, because ultimately federal law should preempt state law, but they're trying for all these loopholes, with apprenticeships and things like that. But the fact is, the work is the same, the hazards are the same, and kids are dying.
I want to unpack that for a second, because right when that came out, we talked about it extensively. That what the state was allowing to happen is basically the companies to have immunity if any of these kids get hurt on the job, because it's an apprenticeship program. It's approved by the school. So, maybe the school's liable, or maybe nobody's liable, and kids get hurt, maimed, killed, and nobody's responsible. That seems clever.
Yeah, and even for workers' comp. I mean, companies already get away with a lot with workers' comp. You can't sue your employer because you have to go through workers' comp. And now these kids don't even have those rights.
Well, average workers don't have the right to sue their employer either, because we gave up our constitutional right to access to the courts because of the grand bargain. And sadly, what's happened over the last several decades is employers have gotten further and further away from being responsible. I know here in Pennsylvania, the laws have been weakened over the decades to where, God help you if you get hurt on the job in this state.
Yeah, it's kind of a state-by-state race to the bottom. That's part of the problem with workers' comp is it's a state-by-state program. So, you have this race to the bottom where every state is trying to weaken their workers' comp laws more than the state next door to attract more business. That's why we have federal programs like OSHA and federal programs like Wage and Hour, which hopefully can actually set national standards, so you don't have the kind of race to the bottom that we're seeing with workers' comp.
I like the way you put that, hopefully, because I'm sure you, like I, have been watching our Supreme Court, and it seems like there's no law that's decided. There's nothing that they won't overturn or make up out of whole cloth, and I fear we're heading so far backwards to somewhere in a worse place than the Lochner era, that these child labor law things stand, that more attacks on workers' comp and all of the 20th century are allowed to happen.
Yeah. Well, when Donald Trump was elected, and he brought one of his main advisors there was a guy named Steve Bannon, who we all know, who I think was in jail for a while before Trump pardoned him. But his goal, and he stated it right out front, his goal was what he called deconstructing the administrative state. And the administrative state, to them is basically all of the laws, all of the agencies that protect workers, that protect consumers, that protect the environment. OSHA, Wage and Hour, EPA, Consumer Product Safety Commission. What he's trying to do, and what business is trying to do, and what the court is chipping away from, although they haven't quite made the final blow yet. What they're trying to take away are these agencies' authority to really set the kind of standards that Congress originally gave them when they passed these laws. And now you have Congress kind of, again, they're just creating stuff out of thin air, like their so-called major questions doctrine. That major questions doctrine, the Supreme Court decides, well, Congress may have given OSHA discretion to do this, but it's kind of a big issue. So really they should go back to Congress to get authority for that. And you're seeing this all over the place. You're seeing legislation now called, one bill called the REINS Act, which the House has passed, which would say that no agency can issue any standards or regulations, EPA, OSHA, unless Congress approves them. And we all know what Congress is, especially with Republicans, is best at doing, nothing. So these agencies can be working for years on regulations that protect the public or protect workers. And if Congress doesn't say, all right, we approve those, which obviously they're not going to do, it's all for naught. We don't have any regulations. We don't have any protections.
And what's interesting to me is, again, all I hear from my Republican friends is job-killing regulations. You're killing jobs, Jordan.
Yeah, and all the studies that have been done about that, show just the opposite. Safety. Big companies know this. There's some good companies that know this, but it's not good business to be injuring and killing your workers. Unless you have an infinite supply of workers to come in, and that's what's happening now with the low income workers, or kids for that matter.
Yep.
One gets hurt, one gets killed. There's always plenty more to bring in there, and if they're low skilled, you're not losing anything.
And especially if they're kids. At the end of the day, now look, they're not going to be your kids or my kids. We know who they're going to be, and they're exploitable, they're desperate, and ripe for the picking. And that's where federal laws, or state laws for that matter, are supposed to step in and protect kids from these kind of low road employers. It's infuriating. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Jordan Barab. Jordan's a former acting assistant secretary and deputy assistant secretary of labor for OSHA. Also, make sure you check out his website, jordanbarab.com/confined spaces. This is a must to go to site if you care about working people. Now, what I want to go back to for a second is because, I say all the time, Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do, not the rhetoric that comes out of their mouth. And I go, OSHA was put into law by Richard Nixon, a Republican. This could never happen today, but there was a time in the past where you didn't have Republicans as bad as they are today. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you used to have kind of a bipartisan consensus, that workers need basic protection, and health and safety protection and wage and hour protection. There were moderate Republicans back in the day. I know it's hard to remember that now, that kind of agreed that you needed these kind of laws. I mean, obviously there was a fight about how strong to make them and that type of thing, but there was a general consensus that these laws were needed. And that consensus, I think, stayed. I mean, there was always, all the way back to the Carter administration, there were accusations that OSHA was killing jobs, but it was really, kind of the Newt Gingrich Congress that really started to, hold this anti-regulatory stuff and make it as important as it was, as it's become, and made OSHA kind of the public enemy number one with its ergonomic standards, which they finally repealed. And ever since then, OSHA has been, EPA has been, wage and hour have been, public enemy number one. And you've unfortunately seen the effects of that. You have all of these agencies, especially OSHA and wage and hour, are incredibly understaffed. I mean, very small agencies, tiny agencies. I mean, OSHA's entire budget is only about $632 million, which is incredibly small considering their mandate. I mean, they have the mandate to protect the health and safety of 158 million workers in 10.9 million workplaces, with a very tiny budget. And wage and hours budget is even smaller, and they're the ones that are supposed to be policing workplaces for child labor and wage theft and things like that. They have nowhere near the resources to be able to do the job that Congress gave them. And now you have not only Republicans in Congress, but the courts trying to take away whatever authority they have.
Which is why on the wage theft front, what is it? The wage theft accounts for 10 times what all of the robberies and all the stick-up gas station jobs and all of the theft combined. It's like 10 times the much. But you never see employers go to jail for robbing their workers. It's because it's not in front. It's not front and center, Jordan. It's not one of the things that we see on the evening news.
Yep. And then you see these. I mean, these crazy things that the employers, some of them get caught, but for everyone that gets caught, there are probably 100 out there that don't get caught. I mean, one hired someone to be a fake priest and take workers' confessions about any crimes they may have committed in the workplace. I mean, luckily, wage and hour caught up with them. I mean, you had another one where a worker was complaining he hadn't gotten his final paycheck. I can't remember how many thousands of dollars it was, but basically the employer said fine. The worker complained. There was a ruling against the employer. The employer said fine and delivered the last paycheck in pennies on the worker's driveway. So I mean, even it's just trying to chase these things down, trying to become aware of them, having enough staff and resources to enforce them, and being constantly under attack in the courts. Which means you need lawyers, you need to hire lawyers. I mean, it's very frustrating, and again, people are getting cheated and they're getting killed because of it.
Lastly, I want to get your thoughts on, because as I've said a moment ago, I believe Republicans hate working people. Again, look at what they do. The Texas governor signs this Death Star bill, and within days, you've got, a postal worker who dies on the job. You've got other workers who are dying on the job because the ultimate preemption bill went and undid brakes for people in high temperature areas, and it literally immediately cost people their lives.
Yeah, I mean, the workers that died there wouldn't have been covered by the ordinance that the governor, would be repealing. But I mean, if you're a politician or a governor in a state and you pretend to care about people and you pretend to care about workers, and you see workers in your state dying of heat, because they aren't given the breaks and they aren't given the water, wouldn't you think you would, look into maybe strengthening worker protections instead of weakening them? I mean, in the face of death, they're going the opposite way, and they're just ensuring that more workers will die. It's just incredible, and why people don't vote these people out of office, lock, stock, and barrel. I just really don't understand, because they're so blatantly, not just anti-worker, but pro-death, and It should be obvious to everyone.
Yeah, and again, for me, these are election issues. So the always question I end up with is, what do we do? How do we fix this? How do we? Because look, I haven't met any working person who goes, yeah, I want to be less safe at work. Yeah, I want to be killed on the job. I want to be injured and maimed. Most people I know are like, no, I want to be safe. I want to go home to see my wife and kids. I want to be able to spend the fruits of my labor. What do we do?
Well, Rick, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about, back, when Richard Nixon signed the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and there were moderate Republicans then. The other difference between now and 50 years ago is you had much stronger unions and workers, who are much more organized. And if you're in a union, you have much better protections against any kind of exploitation, including, your health and safety on the job. I mean, if you're looking at, trying to tell people what to do now, I mean, obviously, voting these worker hating Republicans out of office. I mean, that's the obvious first step, but also organizing unions, and collectively acting, collective bargaining, collectively acting, joining whatever worker groups, organizing groups, and obviously labor unions, because ultimately, even the people that founded OSHA understood that the Occupational Safety and Health Administration would never be big enough or powerful enough to guarantee the health and safety of workers all over the country. And that law gave workers a lot of rights in the law, but back then it was kind of assumed that workers would have, unions, and they would be able to use these rights through their unions. Now they don't have those unions, and it's very difficult, for workers even to use the rights that they've been given in the law, because they're afraid of retaliation, or they don't know about their rights, or they aren't trained about the hazards they have because they don't belong to unions as much as they used to.
That's an excellent point. It really is. And this is where, again, I talk about strengthening unions and people joining and forming unions. But also, we've got to save the laws that we have and the agencies that we've got to help us fight for, for the vulnerable, for the 16-year-old kid who's in a sawmill. I was talking to a friend the other day who had said, years ago, that in these sawmills there was a kid. He was doing research for a book, and there was an 8-year-old kid that got killed in one of these sawmills. And what they used to do, this is years ago, they would send these small kids in to clean out the sawdust, so they would never have to turn off the blades. So you've got these 8-year-old kids crawling in there. Now, again, I don't think we're that bad yet, and the key word being yet, but I think we could be.
Yeah, right now we're seeing where they'll send immigrant workers, especially undocumented immigrant workers, into incredibly dangerous jobs because they know they won't complain about it. They may not even be aware of the hazards, and if they get killed, so what? Their body gets shipped back to Latin America. It's the same thing with kids. They're not going to complain about it. They don't know. I mean, they're willing to take the risks, and unfortunately, we're seeing what happens there. It's just a new exploitable group of quote unquote workers.
There you go, Jordan. I appreciate the time. Hope folks will check out the website jordanbarab.com/confined spaces. Also look at the rest of the site. Lots of great stuff there. But Jordan, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Rick. Been a pleasure.
Again, check out the website, jordanbarab.com. We'll get links out on social media. Let's take a quick break. Back with your thoughts after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1911. That was the day that the song "The Preacher and the Slave" first appeared in the Little Red Songbook. The Little Red Songbook was a compilation of labor songs published by the Industrial Workers of the World Union. The booklet was pocket-sized, so labor activists could carry it with them wherever they would go. Music was an important part of the IWW labor culture. Joe Hill was probably the most well-known of the IWW songwriters. Many of the songs penned during this era are still sung at labor rallies and meetings today. But not everyone appreciated the music and the message of the IWW, a radical union that called for all workers to unite together. When IWW activists, or wobblies as they were called, would give speeches, they would sometimes be heckled and jeered. Authorities would harass and break up meetings. Sometimes Salvation Army brass bands that were competing for space and audiences on street corners would disrupt IWW rallies with their music. Joe Hill wrote his song, The Preacher and the Slave, in response to this musical disruption. He set the lyrics to the tune of the hymn In the Sweet By and By. Often, IWW songwriters satirized hymns played by the Salvation Army, which the Wobblies dubbed the Starvation Army. The lyrics tell of long-haired preachers who tell workers to stop agitating because they will eat by and by. The song was a critique of religious leaders who did not help working people. It became one of the most popular Joe Hill tunes.
Long-haired preachers come out every night. They try to tell you what's wrong and what's right.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You know, I remember back when I was in high school, I wrote a paper on OSHA. The 1970 OSHA Act and how Richard Nixon was the champion of it. And I think today, you know, it's impossible to get any worker protection anywhere legislatively done. Now, I know here in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania State House has moved a piece of legislation that would protect public sector workers, kind of like a public sector version of OSHA. I don't think it's going to get through the Senate, but it's one of those things that, you know, it's possible. It's possible. Maybe, I think there's a governor who would sign it in this state, but there aren't Republicans who go, yeah, we need to protect workers. And this is the thing that blows my mind. Because, you know, the people who die on the job, the people who get injured on the job, nobody cares if they're Democrats or Republicans, if they wear the red hat or the blue hat. Their families are screwed. And that's the unfortunate reality in this country. You get hurt on the job, you're done. You're screwed. Yeah, they'll pay a little bit of money. You'll get, you know, a portion of your income. Here in this state, you're only guaranteed 500 weeks. And then they can cut you off onto your own. And there's no health care, there's no pension, there's none of that stuff. And, you know, how do you raise a family like that? How do you support a family with that kind of scenario? What we've allowed to happen, you know, I call it the no rights at work agenda. They start off with right to work laws because we don't need them stinking unions. And then they go after unemployment. They cut down the number of weeks. They cut down the benefit. They cut all that and make the obstacles, you know, so hard to get in front of. Then they go after workers' compensation. Of course, gotta gut that because, hey, we need to compete. So the states with the weakest protections for working people are where corporate America wants to go. We never talk about that. We never hear about the fact that, you know, workers are killed every day in this country. You know, some 5,000 plus killed every year. People who got up in the morning, brushed their teeth, kissed their babies, had their breakfast, drove off to work, and did not come home. Or the thousands, you know, what do they say? It's, you know, 90 to 100,000 people die from occupational illnesses where they were exposed to something, took it home, and over the years it ended up killing them. And we've got politicians, Republicans, say who it is, who are okay with that. They would be the same ones who before workers' compensation became the law of the land, who when you would sue, because you used to be able to sue the company because that was, you have the right to sue for anything, you know, over $20 and have a trial by jury. And they would say, look, you know, it's your fault. You knew the risks. You knew what you were doing. You put yourself in a dangerous position. You made the choice to work for this employer in horrible, depressed, dangerous conditions. That's your fault. And they would stack juries with people who thought just like that. Because, of course, we're going to have, you know, some working people go, yeah, you know, I work in those conditions safe. It's never going to happen to me until it does. And then you have families who are basically out in the street. And these companies were getting away with killing thousands, tens of thousands of workers. OSHA, workers' comp, all of the advancements of the 20th century made that better. Made it better to where most people now expect to come home at the end of the day. Most people expect to come home in the condition they went to work in. That wasn't always the case, and it's because of the policies that we moved. It's because of the decisions that were made by statesmen, not Marjorie Trainwreck Green and her holler monkey screed, not Matt Forehead Gates, not that clan, because they don't care about working people. Again, Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. Find me a policy that in the last 40 years, a Republican has proposed, passed, and gotten signed into law that actually benefited a working person. And don't tell me tax breaks, because it doesn't benefit working people. Find me one thing. I want to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm actually looking forward to it. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Quick break. Right back.
Canada's wildfire season is now officially the worst ever recorded.
Canada's fires shatter records, sending smoky air back to the U.S. and to Europe. Intensifying rainstorms pose hidden flood risk across U.S. Plus,
to remove PFAS from public water systems across the country is an enormously expensive endeavor.
3M settles another lawsuit over forever chemicals in municipal drinking water systems.
All of those toxic stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
They want to take away your washing machines and your dryers.
Nope, they don't.
They don't want to give you any water for the washing machine.
Also a lie. This is your Green News Report. Hey, sorry that we got to fire up the Donald Trump fact-checking again, but so be it. What do you have for us today, Desi Doyen?
Well, smoky summers may be our new normal in the U.S. Air quality is again plummeting for millions of Americans, this time in the upper Midwest and Northeast, due to smoke from Canadian wildfires. This week, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Detroit vied for the city with the worst air quality in the world. The Canadian smoke has even crossed the Atlantic Ocean to hit the UK and Spain. Officials in Canada say 2023 is officially Canada's biggest fire season in modern history, with fires coast to coast, driven by unusually hot and dry weather. And it's not even peak fire.
KCAA Loma Linda. The Legacy KCAA 1050 AM and Express 106.5 FM.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. House Republicans are demanding a briefing from the Secret Service on the cocaine found at the White House. Senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has an update on where the bag was found.
The secure ground entrance on West Executive Avenue, often used by the president, senior officials, staff, and some visitors. Sources familiar with the investigation say the small plastic baggie of cocaine was found in a storage cubby just past those doors on Sunday night, a short distance from the tightly secured Situation Room.
Oversight Committee Chair James Comer requested a briefing from the head of the agency by the end of the week. The committee wants to look into White House security procedures. The U.S. will begin supplying Ukraine with cluster munitions. According to multiple reports, the Pentagon is expected to announce on Friday that President Biden has approved Kyiv's request for the weapons. The move bypasses a U.S. law prohibiting the production, use, or transfer of cluster munitions. Firefighters are still putting water on that cargo ship in the port of Newark, where 2 of their own died Wednesday night battling an intense fire. The desperate Mayday calls are being released.
Firefighters have been located, but they're unable to get them out by this time. They're trying to get them out.
Meantime, flags are flying at half-staff, and purple and black bunting drapes the firehouses where Wayne Brooks Jr. and Augusta Akabu served the city of Newark for years. The latest jobs report shows a smaller jump than expected. Michael Kessner has more.
Payrolls increased by 209,000 last month, while analysts predicted somewhere in the neighborhood of 225,000 new jobs. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics also reported that the unemployment rate remains just about where it was in May, sitting at 3.6% for the month of June.
Steve O says he spent most of Thursday afternoon in a police car after jumping off the Tower of London Bridge into the Thames River. The jackass was in the UK to tape a comedy special and jumped into the river while holding a Union Jack umbrella. The police eventually let him go, but warned him that his stunt might encourage others to commit suicide. You're listening to the latest on NBC News Radio.
Miss your favorite show? Download the podcast at kcaaradio.com.
In these trying times, many people are depressed and lost because the future of our society is up in the air. If you're turning to substance abuse because you are feeling there is no hope, we have a way for you to see the light. SAD, or Stop Abusing Drugs, is a nonprofit organization that will help you, at no cost to you, stop abusing drugs. Founded by Tony Navarchi, SAD will refer you to the top detox doctors in your area. SAD will pay every and any cost for you, including doctor visits, counseling, and medications. If you need help, SAD is there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you or a loved one needs help, or if you have a suggestion or idea for Tony, you can reach out to him by calling 844-493-3386. That's 844-493-3386. Or email Tony at tony@saddetox.com. That's Tony at saddetox.com.
Edge Manufacturing would like to remind listeners drunk driving remains one of the nation's most serious issues. 45% of traffic fatalities recorded in the U.S. are caused by an intoxicated driver. When you get on the road, do yourself, family, and your community a favor. Remember the 3 C's of safety: caution, courtesy, and common sense. If your hand has been on a bottle, keep your foot off the throttle. This reminder is courtesy of Edge Manufacturing, serving our area with pride and integrity, specializing in truck roll-off, welding, steering, and suspensions. Call today for all your trucking problems at 909-653-5716. That's 909-653-5716. That's Edge Manufacturing, on the air because they care. Ivy League Auto Transport and Flavors Mobile Detailing would like to remind listeners drunk drivers remains one of the nation's most serious issues. 45% of traffic fatalities recorded in the U.S. caused by an intoxicated driver. When you get on the road, do yourself, family, and your community a favor. Remember the 3 C's of safety: caution, courtesy, and common sense. If your hand has been on a bottle, keep your foot off the throttle. This is a reminder courtesy of Ivy League Auto Transports and Flavors Mobile Detailing, serving our area with pride and integrity.
Yard House Restaurant of Temecula takes this special time to salute the Temecula men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve, as they have fought hard to restore peace around the world. American troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. That's from Yard House Restaurant in Temecula, where they say service isn't just a courtesy, it's a commitment. Call 951-296-3116 for Yard House Restaurant of Temecula at 40770 Winchester Road in Temecula.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like watering your lawn during the hottest time of the day and leaky faucets. They're tunes from another time, because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Drip.
You're listening to the Tahibo Tea Club radio show, hosted by Milan Vukovic, founder of the Tahibo Tea Club.
Now, talking about diabetes, it's one of the easiest diseases that one can actually see our tea working on a daily, weekly basis because they're taking their blood sugar measurements on a daily basis. So let's say a diabetic is taking on average 40 units of insulin per day, and so they need to take their blood sugar daily, because some days they'll be taking 30 units of insulin and other days they'll be taking 50 units. Well, that's a huge change of 40% that they need to know about. So they keep taking their medication. They start drinking the tea. In 2 to 3 weeks, they'll notice they only need 30 units of insulin on average per day. In 4 to 6 weeks, they'll notice they only need 20 units of insulin per day. And in 6 to 8 weeks, they'll notice they only need 10 units of insulin per day. And in 8 to 10 weeks, they'll notice that they don't need to take insulin anymore. So even though the complete healing period is 2 to 3 months, they can see the healing right before their very eyes. Now, the reason it's important to continue taking insulin or any other medication that a person is on is because the tea is not a drug that is replacing a drug that the person is taking. The tea is literally healing the organs to do what they were supposed to do in the first place. And let's face it, none of us is getting any younger. In a case of type 2 diabetes, it's helping to heal the pancreas to produce and release its most important hormone, insulin, and that's what it's supposed to be doing anyhow. Now, previously I started talking about animals, and we've got a couple of minutes left, so I'll go ahead and wrap up about animals. Now, to get dogs to drink the tea is really easy. All you have to do is replace their water in their bowl with the tea, and the dog will drink it regularly. And if by chance it doesn't, all you have to do is put 2 or 3 ice cubes in the tea, and the dog will think it's dessert. And by tomorrow he'll be asking you for the tea. Dogs like it so much that one customer called up and he says, do you know that dogs prefer your tea over water? And I says, well, I know they like it. I says, but why do you say that they prefer it over water? He says, I have 3 dogs, and one of my dogs is sick. And since I have multiple dogs, I have multiple water bowls, and I replaced that one bowl for the sick dog with the tea. And that bowl of tea was gone first every day, and not the water bowl. So since the dogs are the only ones using them, he says, I know that the dogs prefer the tea over water. So it's really easy to get the dogs to drink our tea. Now, we have a lot of cases with dogs. One time, a funny incident, a lady called in and says, I have a friend, and she has a Chihuahua, and she gave the Chihuahua the tea, and it no longer sheds hair anymore. Now, since I have a Chihuahua, she gave the tea to me, and now my dog doesn't shed hair anymore. So I asked her if Chihuahuas shed a lot of hair, and she says, oh yeah, they shed like crazy. About an hour later, a customer calls from Texas, and I told her the Chihuahua story, that I learned something about my own tea. And she says to me, you didn't know that? I go, no. I said, I've got a Siberian Husky, I don't know anything about Chihuahuas. Anyway, she continues, I've been a customer of yours for over 4 years now, and before I started drinking your tea, I used to lose a lot of hair. My hair is long, and he says, when I used to brush my long hair or shower, she says, since I started drinking your tea, I hardly lose any hair at all, and my fingernails are hard like concrete.
Tehibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau Arco Super Tea helps build red corpuscles in the blood which carry oxygen to our organs and cells. Our organs and cells need oxygen to regenerate themselves. The immune system needs oxygen to develop, and cancer dies in oxygen. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit TehiboTeaClub.com. Tehibo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy, O, then continue with the word tea and then the word club. The complete website is TehiboTeaClub.com, or call us at 818-610-8088, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-610-8088, TehiboTeaClub.com. Tehibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau Arco Super Tea comes from the only tree in the world that fungus does not grow on. As a result, it naturally has antifungal, anti-infection, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammation, and anti-parasite properties. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit TaheeboTeaClub.com. Taheebo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy, O, then continue with the word tea and then the word club. The complete website is TaheeboTeaClub.com or call us at 818-610-8088, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-610-8088, TaheeboTeaClub.com.
Now, this next segment is a segment with live listener call-ins from previous shows, and you'll be hearing their questions, their successes, and their experiences with Taheebo tea. So please do give us a call and let us know how the tea works for you. Thank you.
I ordered to eat back your tea 3 or 4 months ago, and since I had so many, young gal at the grocery store saying her immune system was really bad, and that's what. So I ended up